Hello, good morning.
Hi, Sophie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Okay. I was looking at, well, let me just tell you, I don't know if you know who I am. My organization's called Global Expats,
Okay.
and I'm not
Hello? I think you're frozen if you can hear me.
sure if you're familiar with the Federation of American Women's Clubs overseas.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, it was my end. It got unstable, it dropped off. So, are you familiar with the Federation of American Women's Clubs overseas?
No.
Okay, basically they're called expat wives clubs. What they do is they assist expatriated families who are living abroad. I mean, the American Women's Club, of course, their target are Americans. We've got the FIAF, which is targeting the French. Then you have the IMF Family Association, World Bank, Family Network. So there's lots. The original one is the Federation of American Women's Clubs Overseas. That was started in 1931 with the objective of bringing women together to promote world peace and defending the citizens' rights of Americans living abroad. So that's where my focus is in the issues, because my organization, Global Expats, it's really open for all people who are living abroad, regardless of what country and regardless of what nationality. But let's focus on the Americans living abroad. So I became involved in a domestic violence divorce case in Spain 15 years ago. And basically what's happening is the courts, the lawyers, the courts, everybody in the courts, you can go, I mean, I can send you documents. I have these on my activism websites. The violence is being covered up. Victims are being re-victimized. We have, when it's in cases of children, 70% of sexually and physically abused children are handed over to the abuser. In the case of psychological abuse, it goes to 90%. So, this is not insignificant. Now, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the obligation to protect under international law and the Constitution.
Sure.
Are you? Okay. So that establishes the obligation of the American government to protect its citizens, even if they're in a foreign jurisdiction. Okay. So now, how do they do that? Their tool, if you will, is the consulate. So the consulate, there is the Vienna Convention of Consular Relations. Are you familiar with that? Okay, that was 1963. So clearly, and all of these, the different categories, the different things, the different sections, it's all clearly marked in the Convention of Consular Relations. So I've been soliciting through the consulate, my consulate in Spain first. When they hung me out to dry, they said, "We nothing we can do, nothing we can do." I said, "Of course, you have an obligation to do something." So when I got back to the States, I started lobbying the State Department. Now, not only on my case, other people who have brought me cases. Most of it is custody, but there is a man in Japan that was a like industrial espionage, intellectual property. I mean, the thing is people come to me with all their evidence. I said, I don't have the power enough or authority to examine this. This has to be examined by the judicial systems. And if the judicial systems aren't doing it, well, that's when the State Department and the embassies and consulates come in. Are you following me? Okay, so they're not doing that. They're refusing. I mean, I've worked my way all the way up to the State Department. It was under Senator Kerry. Oh gosh, and then I forget all of the State Department secretaries of state after that. So they've all gotten a letter. So since the State Department's not doing its job, I have been going over to Congress. Now, Americans living abroad don't have a representative because they're not living in a state. So what establishes, who you can solicit assistance from for a constituent request under, the federal agency is not doing its job is any state where you have a family member, where you last lived, or you have lived. For me, this is Arizona, Louisiana, well, Florida because it also involves the industrial espionage in my case, because it was a web designer in Florida. So I've just solicited again assistance from Senator Scott and Senator Rubio in Florida. Rubio has responded. They said they're going to look into it. Again, this bucks it over to the State Department. Now, the State Department has got to start assuring that the consulates, the moment somebody comes to a consulate and said, I am in a judicial, whatever, if it's a hearing, whether it's a court case, in some sort of judicial or extrajudicial procedure, the State Department has an obligation, and the consulate has an obligation to assure that the rights of the litigants are being respected. Now, this can involve court watch. This can also involve processing of the papers, because I had all the time, civil servants who were giving me the runaround, giving me the wrong paper. They thought it was really funny, making this poor woman fearing for her life and her life of her children run around like a chicken with her head cut off, making sure that all of the papers were stamped, because otherwise I was going to go to jail under contempt of court. Now we have more and more women who are being thrown in jail. There's one case that's well known. She was a Spanish national in New Jersey. She spent 8 years in jail. And it lacked total standing in New Jersey courts. I'm not sure after she was released. I mean, she had a doozy of a lawsuit against the New Jersey courts. I have a doozy of a lawsuit against the Spanish courts. Now, I have been soliciting assistance because I've been working, my focus in the argumentation is under violence against women as human rights violations. So I've been targeting the human rights community. Baltazar Garzón, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. He's a big wig human rights defender under universal jurisdiction. He's in Spain. Doesn't respond to my emails. And he was a good friend of former presidential candidate in Colombia, Ingrid Betancourt, who I knew and who I supported in her presidential campaign. See, nobody wants to, they just want to get up on podiums and give speeches. I mean, everybody knows Baltazar Garzón just wants to have an audience. Amal Clooney is another one we have contacted. I recontacted her again and I said, would you please bring this to the attention of the press, because women and children are being killed, they're being raped, they're being incarcerated, women are fleeing for their lives. We have an underground network of, when we tell women, if you choose to take your child and run, you better be damn careful that this is really, really life-threatening, because the FBI will come after you, Interpol will come after you, and the women who do, I mean, it is literally life-threatening for their children. And the courts will not look at any of it. And then, I don't know if you're familiar with the International Hague Convention on child abduction. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
So I've looked into that. That's a woman at Berkeley who's running that. I've sent emails to them. I said, wait a second. The only thing that convention is looking at is who has jurisdiction. But all of these lawyers And I mean, I just made this point in a letter that I just finished, well, to Antonio Banderas and Melanie Griffin. Um, you know, if we have to stop, one of the first things is that lawyers are initiating and submitting malicious litigation to the courts that lack standing and lack cause. Are you familiar with standing and cause?
Yes.
Okay, so if it lacks standing, I've told this, I don't know how many times to lawyers and people, litigants, look, if you want to take a case to the courts that you are going to be introducing false testimony, false evidence that lacks standing in cause, you and your lawyer can end up with a lawsuit or end up with prosecution for abusing the courts just to make money. Now, this gets into the case of Prince Andrew and Ghislaine Maxwell. As I said, I'm working for all nationalities, doesn't matter jurisdiction. There's no favoritism here. I'm not looking for anybody getting favoritism. I'm looking for the laws to be upheld and the rights of litigants to be upheld. So the case against Prince Andrew and Ghislaine Maxwell lacked standing and cause in New York courts. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the case. It was the contention was, and that's another thing, the contention was this is pedophilia. Pedophilia is babies, toddlers, and prepubescent children. It is not post-pubescent children, young women or young men. And that's in societies across the world, because those are ages where these people become sexually active. And the average age that everybody loses their virginity is 17 years old. So everybody's a pedophile. So this is, it's everybody, well, do you like Prince Andrew? I'm like, Prince Andrew. I mean, my roommate in England was the sister of a good friend of King Charles, but I don't know King Charles or Prince Andrew. I've been trying to get the Earl Bathurst through Hetty, but nobody reads it. You have the secretaries that just shove the mail wherever. So I'm like, I don't know him. I don't care. I don't know. It's not a question of me liking somebody or disliking somebody. It's a question if the person's rights have been violated. And that is clearly the case. Ghislaine Maxwell has been incarcerated for 20 years in a case that had no standing or cause in those courts. She has a doozy of a lawsuit against the New York courts, as does Prince Andrew against Ghislaine Maxwell, Lisa Bloom. Lisa Bloom's the lawyer on that. She's Gloria Allred's daughter. Now, those are feminist, problematic feminist lawyers. Ugh, they come under the domestic violence extremist in the Biden 2021 report. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. I went through that report. I said, yeah, these are extremists, these are extremists, these are extremists, and they're wreaking havoc. And they're getting away with it and just put up another NGO. So the problems are complex. It's all, as I say, war on domestic terrorism. I finally, well, all of the victims have finally found a lawyer who has submitted our cases, our grievances to the International Criminal Courts. So we're trying to push that through. That's one of the reasons I'm like, Antonio Banderas, would you please, you did a whole video for the UN. The UN's sitting on this. The World Bank is sitting on this. The IMF, World Bank, family associations, they know about my case in Spain. I worked for the IMF Family Association for 2 years. They've been, sitting there laughing about all of this stuff for 15 years while I've been separated from my sons. And all I wanted to do was start a business. And he said, if you do, I'll kill you. Because Microsoft, there was a business manager for a business developer for Microsoft, George Morrison. He became interested in the project in 2007. It's basically, the website is a cross between TripAdvisor, Facebook, and LinkedIn, but for the expat moms, because they're the ones who buy all the stuff. But they don't go to country clubs. They go and buy food and beds and consumer goods. This is, all of my friends, the celebrities, and Cornelia Guest, Deb of the Decade, she was at my school in Foxcroft. They've got to come down from their ivory towers and stop being, I keep on telling all of these socialites, you better be concerned about the 20-year prison sentence of Ghislaine Maxwell. Because the jurisprudence that set has really set you ladies up for a fall. Now start using your voice to expose all of these things. So I'm hoping, that with the American Broads Act and the committee there, we can get a voice there, because everybody's being shut up. And they just put up another, NGO. When I was in Spain, I went to Amnesty International Spain, because all of these reports, according to them, I had 1/4% chance of survival in Spain. My mother was good friends with John McCain's campaign manager for the 2008. I said, Mom, would you please ask John McCain to pick up the phone, tell the consulate to do its job? Oh, I don't want to get involved. See, this is the women who are covering all of this up. Believe me, I got names you can't believe who've known about my case. All I wanted to, I said, you guys, what difference is this than some Muslim country where I want to start, a business, and my husband comes in and destroys my loom or my sewing machine and says, no, you're not working, and I'm going to kill you if you do it. And everybody in the community says, well, go ahead. No difference. I mean, the difference is this is not a sewing machine. It was $1 billion a year company. I mean, when I showed projections to my ex-husband of $1 billion revenues, I knew he wanted to kill me. So, but this is, I'm not trying to bring to this platform my specific case. If anybody wants to look at it, war on domestic terrorism, Taking Back America for the People is more the blogs and other cases that I followed. I also have pending lawsuits in Washington against employers. The first headhunter I met with in 2009, she said, I'll never find you a job because anybody interviewing you isn't afraid that in 6 months you'll have their job. I've barely been able to keep a roof over my head with minimum wage jobs because of age discrimination. And I'm white and I'm American. And I mean, I've got lawsuits against the IMF. I was there for 7 years. I was terminated twice illegally. All of the labor law lawyers say, yeah, you're white. You can't discriminate against white people. I've been terminated illegally several times. I mean, one by a bunch of Black women who didn't like me. So they decided they'd get rid of me. The others, there's a bunch of Asians. So, this is, and my point with a lot of these people who are working on the race stuff is, excuse me, the, particularly with the Obama, after Obama came in and then Trump, we saw a backlash, really aggressive. I mean, the Blacks in Washington, super aggressive towards me. Now, this is as much, or I would even say more, inciting racism than what they're claiming the white supremacists, because it is inciting white supremacy. I mean, I've had it up to here, and I have never, I mean, anybody who has known me, I mean, this is one of my big beefs. I've always been a liberal. Now,
Okay,
where am I?
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I actually have another meeting that I'm going to have to get to at 10.
Okay.
So if
So
there's
how can we
anything that you
move
wanted to-
forward?
Yeah.
So how can we move forward? So, I mean, those are all of my beefs. Those are the problems that this group of people are facing. So really, I mean, what are you proposing? What can we do to get a voice in this committee? And bring these issues to Congress, because we've been knocking on that door since 2010.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't necessarily know if I have a good answer for you. I mean, I'm happy to kind of circle back with the State Department to see we follow up with them on specific cases frequently. And I know that the State Department and our embassies and consulates do attend American citizens hearings abroad. But I think there's yes, there is longstanding frustrations that Americans in foreign countries have to abide by foreign country judicial courts. But that's,
let me just interject there, because this is something that I've been thrown at many times. Spain has the most utopian legal system in the world. Their constitution is 200 years after ours. I have told, when the State Department pulled that one out of me, I said, don't even try and take me out of the jurisdiction of Spain, because I don't want to leave there, because my case would be a hell of a lot more complicated if I was in American jurisdiction. So this is not about not abiding by the laws of that country. This is precisely about abiding by the laws of that country, but abiding by them and not having litigants and not having lawyers and not having judges just trash those laws and their constitutions. So go on. So yeah, it's not about that. And Minnesota, every state, we have 9 million Americans living abroad. So every state, every jurisdiction, you know, has Americans that this affects.
Yeah. I mean, we are strong supporters of rule of law. And so, of course. And so I think if there's, specific ways that we can ensure our friends at the State Department are engaged on cases where they feel like they aren't receiving due process, that's something that we can circle back with them on. But other than that, I'm just not really sure what is in our power here.
Okay, but you're just talking about individual cases. You're not talking about bringing these issues to a congressional platform like the American Abroad Commission that you all are establishing. Because that's really where I want to get the voice, because the individual cases, and also it's not the American consulate to decide whether the person coming to them, the citizen coming to them, has a case or doesn't have a case. That's, neither here nor there. Even if this person is a murderer, I don't care. The consulate, and we do have a jurisprudence on that against the Americans by the Mexicans. That's Avena, Mexico. So this is, this has to be something systematic that the consulates are doing, because they're not. They are absolutely refusing. I went 3 times the American consulate in Madrid and 3 times to the French consulate in Madrid, because I have a French nationality as well. Now, for example, my family, I'm like, oh, you guys just left me there to die. Oh, well, we don't have any obligation, towards you. I'm like, yeah, you don't have any legal obligation. That's true, but you do have a moral one. However, in the case of the Spaniards and the French, and this goes up pretty high. This goes up to ambassadors. This goes up to Ingrid Betancourt and Sinclair. They have it in Spain and in France. Under the penal code, you have an obligation to assist. If someone is in life-threatening situation, you have an obligation to assist. If not, it's a penal offense and you can go to jail. So, as I say, this is systemic, and it's not, let's check and see if the State Department is moving on this case or that case, because that I've been pushing. Anybody who comes to me, this is what we do. They just ignore us. Now they have to stop ignoring it. So this is where all of the congressional members need to start telling the State Department, you better do your job. And if you don't, we will have a congressional constituent request, and we will pursue you. And if you do not defend the rights of our citizens, then we will see you in court. That's what needs to be done. Okay.
Yep. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with me. This was really helpful. And I'll be sure to keep this in mind going forward. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day.
I don't see the congressional member in court. That's all I have to say, because we have submitted to the International Criminal Courts, and all of these issues we are going to be presenting there. And the governments are going to have to explain. We have 2 jurisprudences on violence against women as human rights violations.
Mhm.
Okay, I'll send you a synopsis of those. You can look into those if you want.
Great. Thank you. I
Okay,
really appreciate
you.
that.
Okay, have a nice day.
You as well.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, that's going to go nowhere. That's going to go nowhere.